welcome to an unintentional part 2 because my camera died. So, you know, I was gonna like watch my video back and see where I left off and then like pick it up again. But I think I can remember. I think I can remember where I left off enough to continue, which is like fucking unheard of. So, I wanted to try to see if I actually could remember like not just what I said earlier, but enough of it to continue where I left off, because that would be wild. Um, you trying to make the sofa comfy? Sorry, it doesn't move like leaves. Alright, so I think where I left off was when we were watching this video and she was talking about like how to feel, like become aware of your body and of how the clothes feel hanging on your bodies, your body, and oh yeah, and then she was like, and aware of like how your body feels where clothes are touching it and where it's not. And I was like aware of my arms where there's like no clothes, and I wasn't. That's like the problem. It's really annoying, and I was like, man, I can kind of, if I really focus on it, like it's hard. It's hard to even be aware of like where my clothes are touching, even when they're quite tight. So to try and use my clothes to like frame my body so that I can feel where my body is, I'm kind of learning, but I wouldn't say I can always at all or easily feel that. So I was like, definitely had moments of feeling sort of left out, or sort of like the video didn't apply to me, sort of alienated, I guess that's it. And I would have to catch it and acknowledge that, yeah, there are some things that are going to be harder for me to do, or harder for any of us to do if we're not that connected to our bodies, than it would be for people who find it easy to be in their bodies to do. And it doesn't mean that it's totally inaccessible to me. It just means that I'm going to have to work a bit harder and maybe be a bit patient with myself and very compassionate and very understanding of the fact that it's taking a bit more extra focus and effort and maybe time to accomplish. So like, because it's almost like at first I kind of felt alienated, so I'd rule it out as an option and be like, there's no point in really trying, or even if I tried, there'd be a part of me like held back from really trying because I'm like, this doesn't apply to me, this is like, I'm othered. So catching that was interesting and reminding myself that I do have control over like how I try to adapt these tactics in a way that works for me, and I'm responsible for including myself and for acknowledging and validating the fact that some things are harder than they would be for other people that haven't had a lifetime of trauma. And then, so I managed to like, so there's like quite a lot of barriers really to actually being able to utilize the video as it was intended. But I did get there. We did get there, which wow, it's like way more of an accomplishment than I realized. It's kind of mechanically just doing it until I could find how to make it work earlier. But now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, that's quite an accomplishment. Shit, there's a lot of barriers. And then what did we get to? So I did manage to like, I could kind of feel my body. I had a few minutes of being like, oh, I don't feel it, it's numb, claustrophobic, and like breathe through that and just be like, okay, we'll focus on what bits I can feel. Like if I can't feel where clothes aren't on me, then rather than getting claustrophobic and frustrated at the fact that I can't feel that, just accept that for now and focus on what I can feel, like the rings on my fingers and the gloves and the choker and my hat and this top and like got knee-high socks on. So I was like, just map out the bits of my body that I can feel. And then going inside to feel, to notice without any judgment anything that we encounter within us. Like the energy and emotions and general vibe and thoughts. And there's a lot going on in there. So I noticed that I had a lot of resistance to actually doing this, which is perhaps, thinking about it now, maybe that's what some of the barriers were to me actually being able to do this. Maybe some of the alienation and this doesn't apply to me and this is too hard and I can't do it was actually protective, because when I got to the point where I was like really focusing on what was inside, there was a lot going on there, and I felt a lot of resistance and trepidation and kind of fear. Like, what did I write? I felt a strong urge to dart away from everything that came up. It was very intense. I/we, because I couldn't tell if people would co-con with me or not, and I wanted to be inclusive, were encouraged to welcome and greet with non-judgmental compassion anything we encountered within us. I and we encountered a lot of anxiety and welcomed it, a lot of terror, which we welcomed it too. I kind of had like a visualization, I guess, or like like sensory visualization of like opening my arms a bit and sort of like offering, rather than like embracing these things, which felt a bit too oppressive to me. I was like offering holding or embrace, I guess, like the sensation of, rather than it being too literal and physical, but like the idea of, hey, if you want to come chill with us, Tara, and I can just hug you, like that vibe sent out, I guess. And also obviously 20 parts of myself or of us that were there. I welcome the indignation and misunderstood tearfulness at that I hit, and was like, it was interesting because like I kept hitting intense things, and instead of trying to analyze or accept or even be curious about or interpret anything I encountered, I was just welcoming and accepting and like, cool, indignant, misunderstood tearfulness. That's sad. Do you want a hug? Do you want to chill? Do you want me to just hold you here? Like, you're welcome to be here. That's chill. That's generally the vibe I encountered everything with. And including is quite helpful, because she said you might find that judgmental thoughts or feelings do come up, and that's okay too. So I was like, oh, okay, so I'm welcoming of any judgments that do happen, even though I'm attempting to be non-judgmental in how I'm reacting to things. So I was like, okay. And this, like, after welcoming it and accepting it, I could see really clearly that like it's like I flowed through things rather than hitting, like, rather than like hitting a wall and having to work around it or work through it or work out what it was to get over it. It's like everything just kept going into and around my awareness, I guess, because there was no resistance from me. I was just, yep, yeah, okay, cool, glad you're here, sort of vibes and everything. And I realized that like the resistance, fear, indignation, misunderstood tearfulness at the idea that we would be welcoming and warmly greeting our past abusers, and feelings of not knowing what was lurking around the dark corners of our mind, and the fear of an unknown jump scare about to ambush us any minute. It was like what the trepidation was as well. It's like this feeling of like, ugh, I don't know what's gonna happen, what's gonna come up, what I'm gonna encounter. and like sort of almost being scared to sit there, and like this antsiness, like I wanted to just distract and open my eyes and do something. So it was like quite difficult to just be present and breathe and accept and welcome all of these things. So everything I hit, including that, I was like welcoming to. Welcoming to the thoughts and the fears that we would be, by welcoming all parts of us and everything in there, there's this feeling that we would be there for welcoming abusers and past instances of abuse, which is why there was like this sort of tearful, angry indignation, because we would never do that. So I found myself welcoming these fears and these thoughts, and including the resistance to them and the antsiness of wanting to dart away, and gently and certainly reminded us that nothing within us is or can be not us. Rather than welcoming abusers, we're welcoming parts of us who hold the memory of abusers and of abuse. We're welcoming parts of us who feel the fears and anger for the abusers and the abuse, that maybe at a distance, especially if we're afraid to look any deeper or closer, parts of us at first could feel afraid of these aspects or qualities or parts within us, understandably, through conditioning and association, mistaking affiliated thoughts, feelings, and memories as the people and events themselves. But no part of us is the people or events themselves. They don't live inside us. I know it feels like they do sometimes because of the trauma. It almost felt dismissive to say they didn't when I was writing it. And it was a fine balance between not dismissing and being like, hear me out gently. I know it feels like that. This is what I see as happening. So, because of the trauma, because of stored sensory memories, visualizations, imagery, memories in us and in the body, but they are all ours and parts of us created. That is correcting a bit. Created by us and for us, and not those things themselves. Parts of us created in response to people and events, to hold memories, feelings, qualities from having experienced those situations. But still, everything, everyone, every part within us is of us, is made by us to protect us. And yes, we welcome them all, and can do so safely, knowing that we are not extending that welcome outside of us, and sort of creating this clear distinction, this barrier. Oh, it's just sort of such a weird thought. Like, if I can't tell where my body physically ends, like, if I'm not in my body and I can't feel where its outside edges are, and it feels like I'm bleeding out into the room, does this contribute to the lack of distinction between what's within us and what's outside of us? And like, have some wires at some point been crossed so that it's difficult for us to understand and hold that distinction, maybe in some parts? It's interesting. So knowing that we are not extending that welcome outside of us to the people and events that are the sources of these parts of us, knowing that there is a distinct difference, a disassociation and disconnect between us, inside us, within us, stopping at the outer edge of our frame, and outside of us, events and people in the past who we do not need to reach and will not welcome, and will in fact reject entirely if they have been abusive assholes, while safely welcoming with judgment-free compassion every single part and person and being and thought, emotion, reaction and response within us, and accepting them all and seeing, hearing, feeling them, and acknowledging their right to be there, and allowing them to be there with us as is. So You know, it really does feel, now that I've said it, like there's a lack of boundary. If I feel like my body's bleeding out into the room and I can't quite tell where the room starts and my body stops, and then, okay, we add to that our lack of internal, well, the fact that we're just learning boundaries, and that boundaries are kind of a new concept, and therefore, like, mental and emotional, all sorts of boundaries are new territory for us, as well as physical. Obviously, physical boundaries of our body have not been respected in the past. So that probably means that both coming into out of the room, and then also from the environment to us, there's like a lack of clear distinction of boundary, or we are just now having to set and realize and understand those and teach that there is a distinction and a boundary and a difference. And then I wonder also, because there's the same thing a bit in reverse, like say with flashbacks, like um I think a lot of people in here get like full sensory, they lose the room, they go to a different, like it's as if they're reliving it. I tend to more often just get like emotional flashbacks, I think. So it's like the vibe of the room changes, but I don't notice that it's changed. It's just the vibe of the room is this vibe from this particular event in my life, or this vibe of this particular person or asshole rather that was around at the time is there. It kind of feels like they could be over my shoulder, like they could be around, they could be about to walk in. Like the vibe of the environment around me feels like it's changed when really it's being projected from within. And if that happens a lot, and like all this other stuff, then maybe it's not clear to every part of us in here what is us and what is within and what is not us and what is outside. Maybe that's like not as obvious a distinction as I thought. I guess I just reiterate the differences and the distinctions over some periods of time. And I switch on beautiful dragon colour changing lights, which are awesome. Shreya bought us a fucking glove because it helps me to exist in the room. My imposter syndrome just did a great little thing there that just kind of disproved itself, which I love. Because like I get thoughts sometimes that are like, oh, you're only doing this for this, and it's clearly just an internalized version of like people that we've heard throughout our life saying these things that we've taken on, that I usually just sort of know to question and trace back to source and go, okay, that's not accurate. But the one it just did is I sprayed that on, because just talking about flashbacks and like the night we've had as well, I'm a bit floaty, and it can help to ground through the senses. The sense of smell is really powerful and really useful, and I don't like need all these reasons. It could just be I like the smell of it, but either way, I just did that, and the imposter syndrome thoughts were like, oh, you just sprayed that on for the camera, so that it's just for the benefit of the people watching, and it's like, wait, that's not how scent travels. That's not how that works. Mm. Oh, I'm tired. I'm very tired. I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was helpful. The distinction of like welcoming and accepting everything within us while understanding that difference between what's within us and what's in our past and what has happened to us and what is external to us, and making it clear that in accepting every part of us and everything inside, we are in no way condoning or accepting anything we've been through or anyone who put us through it. because that was kind of a barrier to accepting some parts of us at first, and it feels like it's been really helpful to make that clear distinction and then be able to fully commit to accepting every part within us without reservation. I love it when I say exactly what I mean, like it comes out in a way that I'm like, yes, that is what I was trying to say. Okay. I hope you're all having a really good night. Oh, take care. I'll see you in the next one.